Hello, everybody, and welcome to the UnWokable podcast. I'm your host, UnWokable, and I'm joined today by Jay with I Inside the Classroom, a warrior on Twitter and elsewhere, exposing every nook and cranny of the dark side of what's going on in your schools and universities. And first of all, follow him on Twitter. It's EITC on / official. You got to follow him. Also, please like, subscribe, and share this channel if you like the content we're giving you. But hey, Jay, thanks for being here, and thanks for all the work you're doing, man.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, today we wanted to bring you on to talk about this mysteriously underreported issue at the University of Utah and what's going on there. So, Jay, fill us in. What's happening here at the University of Utah?
So the University of Utah has a transgender clinic, and they also within this clinic have a focus with transgender. I'm going to use their words. I don't believe in transgender kids, but for transgender youth is what they call it, and or gender expansive. And I uncovered a. It was like a webinar or a virtual thing that they did for parents, this training that they did for parents who have these children that they claim are transgender, which are not, which is they don't exist. But anyways, but they had this training, and in this training, there were several things that were discussed, and two of which really caught my eye. One, it was talking about, the hormone replacement, and then another one about the surgeries being done on kids and basically how they rubber stamp the process with a in-house psychologist. And so those were the two main things that I found in this video that really
okay. So to summarize that, we have a University of Utah, red state, or what would be considered a red state, at the very least purple, right? Two Republican senators, one of which is Mitt Romney. I'm not sure if that counts. This with a doctor, and your tweet here says that's giving testosterone to young girls, despite the fact that she knows that they're accompanied with that is an increase in suicidal ideation or in self-harm, and nobody. The thing that got me interested into this, obviously, other than the fact that this doctor has admitted that there's an increase of or a decrease in mental health for the kids or the girls that get it, right, was the fact that not a lot of conservative outlets or any outlets are really talking about it, which is something that I have experienced when it comes to these things happening in red states. Not in every red state. Obviously, we've had some movement on some things in Oklahoma. We've had some movement through Matt Walsh in Tennessee. But this is just a little bit of an undercurrent that I've seen, that these situations in red states or red state universities don't often get the airspace they deserve. So I'm going to show the video here, Jay. Tell us what we're going to see here from her, or what we're going to hear from her.
So you're going to hear her telling parents that there is a risk, an increased risk of, like you said, suicidal ideation or self-harm with girls who receive testosterone. And you're also going to hear, pay attention to the very end of the video. I'll tell your followers, listen to the very end of what she says about what she tells these parents not to do. There's a very, very caveat part at the very end.
Okay. All right. We'll listen. So this is Dr. Nicole L. Mihalopoulos.
I think that's how you say her name, yep.
Mihalopoulos with the University of Utah. Hold on, can you see it? Sorry.
Any teenage boy, cis or trans.
My fault. Let's try that again.
So starting testosterone, and I'm going to stay with testosterone for a minute because it's a tricky hormone. Starting testosterone is not like this magic moment of removing dysphoria. So the initial doses of testosterone seem to do really great things for overall mental health. And we get this improvement in mental health and this lowering of dysphoria. But then mental health goes down and dysphoria kind of rises again. And the testosterone can make people feel agitated sometimes and more irritable and sometimes cause those impulsive reactions, which we don't want to see. So if we think about any teenage boy, cis or trans, and especially that 15 to 24-year-old range, their rate of suicide attempts is very, very high because they act impulsively. And so for those people who are here, whose kids that I give testosterone to, and I say that because I know there's lots of conversation between kids and parents. We were following the guidelines, which said that in a kid who has completed puberty and we should start testosterone, the dose is basically like the almost maintenance dose. It's a higher dose, it's 80 milligrams. And we've decided to start at a much lower dose now to try to decrease that agitation, that irritability, make it a much slower, gradual introduction of testosterone. Because when I went back through over 100 of our trans boy charts and looked at mental health, their rates of suicidal ideations and self-harm and their depression screening scores were much higher than the trans girls taking estrogen before and after estrogen and testosterone. So for your kid, I don't know that waiting until 14 is the most appropriate, or if we need to really address any other mental health stuff that's really agitating, and then say, hey, we've done all of that already, and our legislators really want to know that we've done everything we can before we start something like testosterone. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. No one talk to anyone and tell them I'm saying something different, please, okay? Because what I don't want is for a law to be written that prohibits me from prescribing hormones to your children, okay?
Okay. Well, that was an ending here. What she doesn't want is a law written that prohibits her from prescribing hormones to your children. I want to go to the beginning. That's how it ended, right? But I want to go to the beginning here, Jay, and talk about what she said at the beginning when it comes to testosterone leading to kind of a euphoria at the beginning of the process and then a drastic drop off. Can you speak to that for a second?
So yeah, she basically explains that, at the very beginning, it essentially helps with gender dysphoria. That's what she claims. But then not very long into young girls taking testosterone, they start to increase in the risk of increased of dysphoria per se. And then they also get more agitated. They get more irritable and more impulsive. So not less impulsive, more impulsive. And then, so the dysphoria, which they claim this is helping to solve, is increased after they take it. So we're not solving anything with giving these girls this testosterone.
Well, and what she ended up saying was that you basically need to give them smaller amounts of the testosterone to avoid what testosterone does naturally, which is, she explains in boys and in 15 to 24 was the age group that she used, correct? That increases agitation or just general boyness, right? If you want to call it masculinity or just being more forceful, because that's what testosterone does naturally in boys. And so giving it to girls does the same thing. And she also quoted a fact that the ideation in boys, mental health ideation, let's call it that for the sake of YouTube here, because I'm sure they'll find some way to take me down, that it increases impulsivity the same way that it does in boys during that age range. But she does not recommend removing girls from testosterone. She actually recommends giving it to them earlier, correct?
Correct.
Did I hear that wrong? Wow. And if you couple that with the end of what she said, and let's just go back to listen to that. Let's go back and listen to what she says here at the end.
Everything we can before we start something like testosterone already. And our legislators really want to know that we've done everything we can before we. I don't know that waiting until 14 is the most appropriate, or if we need to really address any other mental health stuff that's really agitating, and then say, hey, we've done all of that already. And our legislators really want to know that we've done everything we can before we start something like testosterone. Okay. It's a little more fun, it should be. Okay.
So her reaction here, correct me if I'm wrong, is she's pensive or upset that the legislators in her state of Utah, which again, the University of Utah is funded by it's funded by taxpayer dollars, right? That the legislators in Utah want her to do due diligence before she recommends giving hormones that will alter a child's psyche and physical body. She's talking about that process as if it is a barrier to what it is that she's wanting to do. Am I getting that wrong, Jay? It just seems that she thinks that that's not really a process that should be observed.
I mean, based on her expression, like her overall expression while saying this is what gives me that impression. And this all comes at the heel of the Utah state legislature was in the process of trying to outlaw this. Well, they got vetoed by Governor Him Cox. And
when did that happen?
I would have to go back and look. I believe it was I believe this was in like 2021.
Okay, right. Okay. That's what so it wasn't recently, it was last year.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And so they already know that the legislature was trying to basically stop them from doing this. And they actually had the University of Utah actually had a major push against this with HRC, the Human Rights Center, whatever. Anyways. And so they joined forces to basically get the conservatives, or quote unquote conservatives, to just basically take a knee and let them do it.
Okay. This is, and I'm a little bit speechless because it seems to be a running thing in Republican-run states. Utah is a Republican-run state, Republican governor, 2 federal Republican senators, and I believe a Republican House and Senate.
Correct. Both are majority run.
So what, Jay, give me some insight here. What do you think is going on in the heads of these Republicans when polls have shown that over 80% of Americans believe that hormone therapy for the purposes of transitioning kids, and definitely transition surgeries, are detrimental, should not be done to kids under the age of 18, if not 21. What do you think is going on in the minds of these Republicans and Governor Cox, right, to veto a legislation that seems so commonsensical, that you should know that doctors shouldn't be allowed to perform surgeries that change the lives of kids for, the entirety of their lives, when they're not old enough to make that decision? What's going on in these Republicans' heads, man?
My theory is this. I believe it is who they have funding their campaigns. For example, I'll give an example. In Boise, Idaho, you have Governor Brad Little, who receives funding from Micron, who receives funding from several other blue leftist organizations as part of his super PAC. And there's several other conservatives in the Idaho legislature that are within this PAC. And so you have these conservatives. That's what they call themselves, and I don't think they are, because if they were, they would stand up and say, "Hey, look, fine, we don't want your money. If this is what you stand for, sorry, we don't want your money."
Right.
But they won't, because that's how they get elected. And so you have leftist organizations influencing conservative, quote unquote, governors and legislatures, and so they don't want to upset their donors and their donor base, so they just kind of take it the oh, well, we don't really want to infringe on other people's. That's not their thing. Well, that was the same thing with Governor Cox in Utah with the whole trans sports bill. That's where this was all together. They were kind of put together, and so I believe it has a lot to do with who is funding these politicians.
Did the trans sports bill in Utah pass?
No, Governor Cox vetoed it. And I actually have a podcast. I haven't shared this yet, but I have a podcast from several of the doctors with the University of Utah, who they basically talked about their strategy to get Governor Cox to take a knee.
Oh, wow. Well, if you want to share that, you can. I understand if you want to share it on your own, but that is so indicative of the kind of center power structure that's dominating even red states. Yep. And I think we saw that in Oklahoma with the quote unquote banning of underage trans surgeries that didn't do that. And what concerns me though, and what you also just described in Utah, right? What concerns me is that there seems to be this apparatus of Republicans, and I don't want to call them conservatives, so let's call them Republicans.
Yeah, that's right? A good point.
And that are not just bending the knee, but could also be profiting off of this in many ways. Because it all goes back to the university systems in these red states. People have to understand that universities, especially in states like Idaho and Oklahoma, and maybe not as much Utah, but even there, have an outsized influence over the way a state is run, because in states like Oklahoma, and I'll just use Oklahoma for example, they command a large portion of the money that come into the states, whether that is through sports or just through research and medicine. And it seems that Republicans in these states, and we'll just talk about Utah right now, have no backbone to take this on. And from what you're describing, you believe that is because there are people funding campaigns that will either say, if you don't vote against this or veto this, we're going to come after you. We're going to make sure you're not elected. Or they get them on the front end and, bribe them or, donate to their campaigns in order to get them to protect these so-called rights. Let me ask you this, Jay. Let me play your devil's advocate with you for a second. There's often the case of parental rights. Do you believe that a parent should have the right to be able to basically order a doctor to medically transition their child before the age of 18 or 21?
Absolutely not.
Why?
Because they don't have the right to abuse their child. What they are doing to these children via the name of healthcare and gender affirming care is garbage. They are sterilizing these children and they are mutilating them, chopping off their breasts, all in the name of helping them. That is not
Right. It's
helping them. That's abuse. You look at Chloe Cole. She's a prime example of this.
Who is Chloe Cole? Explain that to us.
So she is a young girl who just turned 18, I believe, who is detransitioning after already being transitioned starting at the age of 15. And I don't know her full story, but I believe she had her a double mastectomy. She had her chest chopped off by doctors, all in the name of healthcare, and then was chemically transitioned as well. And so you have people like her who now at the age of 18 is starting to realize I made a huge mistake.
Yeah. And that's what it comes down to. And I shared a video, I might try to find it here, to bring this into what it is that we're talking about of a doctor from 5 years ago. And this is a doctor in India. Okay. And can you still hear me? Oh, did I lose you?
Can you hear me?
Oh, I can hear you now. Can you hear me? Sorry, okay. Go ahead. You can mute. That's fine. Of a doctor in India who, so I shared a video today that was from 5 years ago, and here it is. I can pull it up, and you actually retweeted it. I appreciate that. And of a doctor in India who talks about who talks about what the appropriate age is to transition anyone, right? To transition anyone in whether they're, male or female at all. Now, this was 5 years ago. It seems that we have moved drastically beyond this point, but I just want you to listen to this doctor in India explaining what it is he believes the correct age is to be able to transition anyone.
Gender reassignment surgery. Most patients who seek gender reassignment surgery are usually adults because that is when they can actually think and feel that yes, they have a decision making power for them to actually think that yes, I can go ahead and do something about the problem that I'm been facing or what I feel psychologically that I'm trapped in a wrong body. So usually the patients are adults. The right age is, of course, we would not do it in a younger age group. So right age would be anybody about 21, because even before we go in for the gender reassignment surgery, there is a lot of psychological counseling and psychiatric evaluation which needs to be done to find out whether they are the right candidates for a gender reassignment surgery. Only then we can go ahead and do the procedures. So 21 years is what I prefer, but it's usually anybody who's above the legal age should be able to undergo a gender reassignment surgery. It varies from country to country, and I prefer to do it only after 21.
Okay, so this doctor in India 5 years ago says he only prefers to do it not 18 even, right, which would be the legal age in America, right, but at 21, and he doesn't really talk about the hormone process because that wasn't as big of a thing at this point. But I want to, Jay, how much or how the number of kids or people over the last 5 years, how much of an increase has there been in the people that want to seek transition surgeries in the younger age, under 21 age group? Can you answer that?
I actually don't know the stats on that, but I know it has increased dramatically.
It 700% is what I've heard since in the last 5 years, that people who wanting to seek underage surgeries or transition surgeries has increased at that rapid scale by 700%. Now,
and you can't
Go ahead. Go ahead.
So, and you can't tell me that that's because of acceptance being somehow made a thing. That no, not that is there is a social contagion.
Well, okay. So as somebody who digs in, so your entire account, very successful, very well run, very pertinent account on Twitter. As somebody who's seen video after video after video, what do you think is causing this transition process, this move toward this increase in kids specifically wanting to alter themselves physically through hormones and through surgeries?
So I think there's a couple of things. It's the way they're doing this isn't just from one solitary approach. You have through schools. That's a major push. We're socially transitioning children in schools. Social media is a huge one, especially YouTube and especially TikTok. Those two are very, very dangerous. So parents, if you're listening, I would really caution you with your children using either of those two sources without your supervision. But anyway, so that being said, so those two, and then you have it also on the medical side. The Academy of Pediatrics has basically now started telling pediatricians that they should be asking children, not even teenagers, children, do you feel like you are the same as what you or on the inside as what you are on the outside? Like basically, do you feel like you are born in the wrong body or not? And asking them what their pronouns are. This is a guideline from the American Academy of Pediatrics pushing this. So you have it coming from multiple directions. The medical side, which no wonder why they would, because money. And then you have it coming from the school side, and that I think is less because teachers want to transition children. I don't think. I mean, you have some that definitely are lunatics, but I think they've been completely brainwashed within these universities to believing
Right.
that that's the right thing to do, because
and
all of this is driven by emotional manipulation.
right. So social emotional learning, right?
Exactly.
Right. And so just a quick primer on what social emotional learning is, if you want to just get it down to the brass tacks, it's convincing people that their empathy should usurp their objective reality of what they know is right or wrong. Right? That in order to be a good person, you have to be so empathetic as to think that a child, right? You have to be as to think that a child, if they come to you and say, I'm a boy when I'm a girl, or I'm a girl when I'm a boy, just, I don't know, the same way they would if they said, I'm a fire truck or a dog or a cat, right? That you have to then affirm that in order to be a good person. And the process of social emotional learning is getting people to the point where that's where they go. That automatically the empathy gene or the empathy reaction overtakes all other rational thought.
Correct.
That's the end point of social emotional learning. And so what Jay is describing here, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jay, is that you're saying that there's a whole systemic process that is well funded by activist groups that infiltrate universities, that then infiltrate university health systems, that work and partner with schools, that through, I don't know, like Courage is a Habit has talked about, through school counselors, just like we uncovered here in Oklahoma, right? With the Roy G. Biv gender reassignment clinic at OU Health. They partner with schools to create a pipeline for which they feed into this process. And again, the university makes money through the university health system to make human capital of kids. And it seems to be funded from top to bottom with just this giant stream of money. that is reinforced then, not just by teachers and by university doctors and psychologists, but by TikTok. Am I overstating the kind of scope of this machine that seems to want to make kids human capital for this ideology?
No, I don't believe so. And going along with that, you have the WHO involved with the sexual ed curriculum.
Okay, so explain that to me.
So the WHO, there's the whole
World Health Organization.
World Health,
right?
yep. So there's the whole the new like comprehensive sex ed program that they're trying to push on your children.
Mhm,
That
with-
is directly driven by the WHO.
Okay, well, and I know Kelly Sky, who's been on this channel before, is awesome. If you need to know about WISC and the whole school comprehensive sex education, please follow her and everything she does. But so you're saying that it goes even further, that
Yep.
this goes beyond the borders of the United States,
Yep.
right?
And I'll send it over to you. I actually have evidence of this. This isn't just a conspiracy theory. This is the.
Can you send that over to me now so we can look at it, or
Let me
or do
see.
you?
Let me see if I can find it.
Okay, so
Um,
you said I'll let
but
you find
it's-
it. Go ahead. Go ahead.
If you're familiar with UNESCO or whatever, I cannot.
UNESCO.
Yeah.
UNESCO. hmm
They
The UN?
have a They have a partnership with the WHO.
Right. So UNESCO, which is UN Education Initiative, right, is partnered with the World Health Organization that's pushing comprehensive sex education, which feeds into this gender transition process for kids, basically convincing them at a young age through social emotional learning and other like psychological tools given to teachers through university systems that in order for the kids to be considered good at times, they need to not just accept, but often become something other than what they perceive or other than what their biology tells them they are. Is that wow? And Jay, this sounds insane though, man. And and I've been told this over and over again that for people to hear this all in one fell swoop, you get this instant reaction of this is just a conspiracy, right? But I want to remind people that 20 years ago, for example, and I want to use this very carefully, this example. Gay marriage, and this is why you have gay. So I'll use Gays Against Groomers for a second, who is an awesome organization. You should follow them. But they've drawn a bright line in the sand between gay rights and the trans issue, especially for underage kids, right? And they have stated that the gay rights movement that fought for, say, marriage equality has been hijacked very quickly after that was successfully achieved in 2011. That movement has been hijacked, right, to progress us down the road. But a lot of these activists are the same activists, and that's what Gays Against Groomers has brought out. But I just want to point out that in 2011, if we would have told you that the gay rights movement would be morphed into an effort to turn boys into girls or girls into boys through hormone therapy and medical transitions, the retort to that would have been, you're a conspiracy theorist, right?
Yep.
It would have been you're nuts. So I just bring that up to say that what Jay is describing here, what the University of Utah is promoting here, is in writing. And Jay, did you find that for us that we could show?
Yeah, I'm still looking for it.
Okay.
I might have to, because I had thought I bookmarked it, but apparently I didn't.
Oh, that's always how that works. I understand. So, but you can go and find this stuff. And again, you can visit Kelly Sky. You can visit Gays Against Groomers. You can visit James Lindsay. You can, we've all put up stuff like this. I'd have to go in and find it too. This is not the word conspiracy just means a organized plan to do something. And you can actually be charged with criminal conspiracy, right? To organize to do something criminal, right? And so just remembering what that word means, it's an open door conspiracy. This is something that they, when they talk about ESG, the social aspect of that movement, which I discussed this morning on my channel, right? Social justice, meaning that you have to be empathetic to the point that you are accepting of a doctor who has made given an oath, who has made an oath to the public to do no harm, to promote the medical and chemical transitioning of kids at a young age, knowing what this doctor who I just brought up, that the kids cannot be mentally capable of making that kind of life decision. So Jay, there was another point. I don't want to bring this back up, your video. There was a second video. What was in that video of the Utah doctor, the University of Utah doctor? There was a second part to it.
The very ending, or the
No.
second video with the
this one here. So there was number one. What's in this number two?
Number
Explain
two,
this.
you have her basically explaining, Dr. I can never say her last name, Mihalopoulos or whatever, basically explaining that they have an in-house psychologist who only sees patients. She refers to them as kids, so I'm assuming not adult or not of the age of consent, but that their purpose basically is to help get these kids the ability or the permission to go and
to get the surgeries or the hormones, right? Okay,
Yep.
so just to iron that out, and we'll listen to the video. There's a monetary incentive for both psychologist and doctor from two ends, right? You get the money that comes from the people paying for the surgery and the hormones, right? And the incentives that come from the companies who are pushing the procedures and the hormones. You get a kind of top down, bottom up monetary incentive for both the psychologist and the doctor to push kids and parents into accepting that this is what their kids need to be or need to have done in order to be happy people. Right?
Yep.
Okay, so let's listen to this real quick.
And then Jessica Robinette is the psychologist who started working with us a year ago. And she is not there to be able to provide ongoing every week mental health services, but to provide a second evaluation when that's appropriate. So some kids who are seeking top or bottom surgery need a different letter of support from a mental health provider.
Wait a minute. First, real quick. Jay, I've been told that bottom surgery does not happen with kids under 18.
That's what I've been told too.
Right? Isn't that what we constantly hear? But I let's just listen to that part again. And I believe that she said
are seeking top is appropriate. So some kids who are seeking top or bottom surgery.
So some kids who are seeking top or bottom, some kids who are seeking top or bottom surgery. Because I've been told and was told when I blew up the issue at OU Children's here in Oklahoma that no kids receive bottom surgeries and only some receive top surgeries. But out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks, right?
Yep.
And she just, some kids who are seeking this, and I hate that verbiage, Jay. She says some kids who are seeking this. I do not believe that kids can seek that.
No,
I do not believe that kids have the mental or psychological ability to seek, nor the physical, just the practical ability to on their own seek a surgery that will literally change their the makeup or the I don't know, I want to use this carefully, but literally alter their bodies. I don't understand, man, how these doctors can make the case for this and how people buy it.
What gets me is why in the hell are insurance companies going along with it? Like, other than ESG scores, like I literally have no other understanding why insurance companies would be okay to. I mean, because you can't go get any other cosmetic surgery covered under insurance. Like, if you want an implant, you're paying for that out of your own pocket. If a girl wants an implant, like a chest implant to increase her breast, and it isn't going to happen on a minor either, it would happen only on adults. So why? I mean, apart from until now, I'm sure they're doing it now for children. But prior to that, any other cosmetic surgery, you wouldn't get insurance to pay for that.
Well,
but they all do under the guise of life saving.
Right. So the I think you've hit on something here, is that when you're talking about strictly cosmetic, and I'm going to use their framework here, right? Breast enhancement, butt implant kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
That is, see, but even that doesn't track, because you could say that a breast enhancement could be psychologically beneficial to the person receiving it, right? If they feel better about their body, but there's been this weird distinction now drawn by the insurance industry that in order to decrease dysphoria of gender dysphoria, quote unquote, that it's so mentally beneficial that they'll fund it. And you ask the question, what do they benefit from it? I believe that they benefit from it by, these kids are going to be on the dole for hormones their entire lives.
That's
right?
a good point. Like, they're going to be they're going to be completely medically destroyed for the rest of their lives. Like, they will be, regardless if they detransition or not, they're going to have medical support,
which means their insurance premiums will be higher.
Right?
I mean,
objectively speaking, that's what it seems.
Right. So this appears to me, the intersection here lies within the university system, because university system medical systems are now a public-private partnership, right? As to where Obamacare was maybe beaten back a little bit at different points, right? University systems are run through state healthcare, right? Because they receive tax dollars, right? And it seems to me that you now have, and I think I lost him. It seems to me that you now have a unification through university systems, because the other part about this is you've got things like in Oklahoma, Sooner Health, which is a university-run insurance system. So now we have a public-private partnership on three different levels. You've got Sooner Care, you've got the University of Oklahoma Health System. I'm using Oklahoma as an example, and then the university itself. And I'll bring Jay back in here.
Sorry, I'm not sure my picture just closed out. Sorry about that.
Yeah, that's all right. So, but what I was saying is now, because, and I'll repeat for Jay here, you've got a public-private partnership on three tiers. For example, the University of Oklahoma has Sooner Care, right? Literally,
yep.
OU Healthcare, insurance. And then you've got the University of Health, the University Health System, right? And then you've got the University of Oklahoma itself, all being funded because the University of Oklahoma is funded through tax dollars. So now you have a public-private partnership that's funded from the university, from private donors, like, I don't know, the same companies that would give you the hormones, right? The pharmaceutical companies, and taxpayer dollars all at the same time. If that's not sustainability, I'm not sure what is, right? And then it's this unified system that that lines the pockets of both CEOs and the governors and legislators is seemingly protected by people like Governor Cox in Utah by just vetoing these bills when they come up to make this illegal. I don't understand, Jay, how we don't get to the commonsensical view of what's right in front of our eyes. That there are people on both parties, left and right, who are making money off of human capital, off of this pipeline on multiple different fronts. I just don't. What do you think is causing our cognitive dissonance? First of all, do you think I'm right? Do you think I'm being overblown on this? And if so, what do you think is causing the normal person who views your videos on Twitter from seeing this obvious connection?
Well, and I think, generally speaking, I think people do. They see it. I don't think there's, like, the general population, I don't think has the same cognitive dissonance. However, I think the biggest thing is that is blinding people in this is the disgusting lie that all of this is life-saving and that kids will kill themselves or will commit suicide if they aren't allowed to do this.
Right.
So-
So it's a
so- and so
manipulation,
anybody-
a social manipulation.
Because you don't want children just to commit suicide. Like, no good person does. Like, any good person would see the idea of a child committing suicide as a bad thing,
Right.
and something that should be avoided.
Right.
And so you have that manipulation, that emotional manipulation that they're using to make people think that this is the fix to it. Which, what bothers me with that is, okay, so by that same logic, let's say you have a child who is anorexic and is already, like, majorly depressed and has some major self-esteem issues and would commit suicide because of that. Let's just say, you wouldn't put them on some diet to increase their skinniness, them to be skinny. Like, you would fix the mental issue. You would
Right.
take care of the mental issue, because that's what this is. And so I think part of it is that people don't want to, and conservatives, or Republicans, not conservatives, but Republicans in general, have always played I don't want to go against your rights. You should be able to have the right to do what you want, and the libertarian, like-minded people. That the problem with that is no parent has the right to have their child mutilated.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's the point. Is that this is something I've talked about before. It's called the rise of the child, right? Where children over the last 20, 30, 40, 50 years, even, their social standing has slowly risen to the point where younger and younger, right? You're wanting to consider them full-fledged adults, right?
Yep.
And this going back to when, the first cases, I don't know how old you are, but I remember one of the first cases of children divorcing their parents, right? Not because they were abusive necessarily, or just because they didn't like them. And I believe this is in California. I remember when I was a kid that there was this kid who just divorced their parents, right?
Oh, I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. And they did so before they were over the age of 18, when that normally, would happen. And since then it's progressed to where it's like, okay, 16, you're at the age of consent, and then 14, and then 13. And, to even where you see some people on the left advocating for, 16-year-olds now to be able to vote, right?
Yep.
We've our value system is such that we've put so much stock into the libertarian view that there should be no boundaries on anyone for what they believe or what they want, that is now bleeding down into a point where it's you're doing that with kids who can be so easily manipulated. I mean, you see adults get caught up in cults. So, when you want to talk about Nexium, or you want to talk about, all these cults that have come about, kids are even more susceptible to that, Jay.
Yeah,
They're
because the prefrontal cortex isn't fully developed until they're 25.
Right.
So they already are at a disadvantage.
But we're being told,
adults.
but we're being told that in order to be morally good or empathetic, that we have to then accept that boundary, that redrawn boundary, that kids as young as 10, as I've seen, can tell you that they're not what their biological sex says they are. And you have to then start affirming that with something that's going to make a bunch of money. You know what I mean? So how do we untangle this, Jay? If you, who spent a lot of time in this space, what do we have to do to untangle this, to stop the manipulation and to stop this from happening to kids?
I wished I had a one approach answer of one solution that would solve it. However, I think it's going to come with awareness, bringing awareness to it, making sure that the public actually sees what's happening, so that they can be stop being manipulated by this emotional manipulation that's being used on them to affirm this BS. But I think second, with that awareness, is we need to get a lot more people on the ground with, primary some of these weak-spined ghouls of Republicans out of office, and get people who will actually stand up for children. Because until we do that, and until we get people who will actually solve the problem and will be able to say, you know what, I don't want your money, I don't need your money, I'm going to do what's right, we're not going to solve it.
Yeah,
because there's only so much we can do as far as like bringing awareness. Like there has to be then the action.
Right, and I fear, this is my fear, Jay. We just had the 2022 election, and in red states, Idaho, Utah, Kansas, Oklahoma, the real elections oftentimes happen in the primaries.
Exactly.
And we didn't wake up fast enough.
Nope.
And there were so many that these issues are going to be tamped down. That's what I'm scared of when I see accounts like mine or yours at different times, hampered or mass reported by oftentimes right and left at different points, or claimed to be right and left, right? That the grassroots showing these kinds of things in red states are being tamped down. That's why I wanted to show this today from Utah, right? Because in Oklahoma, we banned this, so to speak. It didn't get banned. Nobody's talking about it now. It's all being overshadowed by the books, which is another issue that needs to be dealt with. But nobody's talking about it, and people are avoiding it in red states like Utah. People are avoiding it in red states like Idaho. They're avoiding it, and red states are the only ones that we have, because the blue states are gone. They're already doing this. It's already unfettered.
Yep.
And my fear is that in the effort to push other programs, that people in the red, or the conservative media are missing the forest for the trees. That and us grassroots accounts that are smaller, but seeing things on the ground, are not getting the play that we need to, or getting this information up to the upper echelons where it can be thrown out, because conservative lawmakers in these states have their finger on the button of some of these conservative media groups, or they have the trust of some of these conservative media groups, these larger ones, whether it's the Daily Wire or it's, again, I love everything these guys do. Okay, I like what they do. But the Epoch Times or the Washington Times or whatever you want to, the Blaze, that these conservative groups who are these conservative media groups who are focusing on these blue states and seeing all of that are just taking the word of these, John Coxes, so to speak, in red states and saying, everything's okay. They've got it under control. They got a plan. They'll take care of it. Let's focus on where it's bad. And my word to them is, you need to be listening to people like Jay at Inside the Classroom. You need to be listening to people like Kelly Sky and the smaller groups that may, and I believe Lisa Logan, who's in Utah as well, right? And myself, who are shining light on some of these under the radar issues in red states that I believe the left is really focusing on, and because they have the blue states.
Yep, they're attempting to capture the red states.
Right. And that's the real battle.
And they're doing it right in front of us.
Right. And so
this is why I think the left hated James Lindsay so much, because he understands the grassroots effort. He understands that and protecting the states that we already have. That we have these, we have conservatives, like, we're able to continue to elect Republicans in these states. Let's get Republicans who are going to do something about it. And he understands that. And that's why I think the left and the right hates him equally. And so we need more people like James Lindsay with a bigger platform and with bigger sources to be able to
pass up the information.
Yeah, because unless we get people like him to who are unafraid of what people will call him to actually engage, I don't think we're going to make much traction. What we really need is another Tea Party movement in the grassroots effort. Like, we need something where we can de-seat some of these absolute cowards in our federal government and put people who are going to do something.
Yeah, but this is my fear, like I said before, is that we've run out of time. They've got now 2 years, and everybody's that's going to be in place and nobody's talking about what I believe is the kind of neck of the problem, which is the university system. It's the connection between the head and the heart, so to speak, of the body, right? And nobody's talking about it. And I fear that with all of the $2 trillion that came in from ARPA, that incentivizes all of this social, emotional learning, the social justice, the medical aspects of these things, that we've run out of time. And now we're focusing all of the fringe issues, which again, I'm not diminishing that. We need to focus on the porn in schools. We need to focus on, but those are all just symptoms of the problem. We need to actually go to where the problem is emanating from. If you've got a back problem, you don't just treat it with an opioid. You go and fix the disc. You know what I mean? And so, well, I hope that I've helped a little bit shed some light on what's going on here in Utah. I know that you've got the Epoch Times, or was it to pick up the story? Newsmax. Okay.
Yep.
And that's
good. Probably be on with them on Wednesday morning.
Great. Good. And so watch for Inside the Classroom there and everything that he is doing to shed light on what's happening in not just red states, but blue states as well. And where else can we find you, Jay?
So I'm on Facebook, but I'm most active on Twitter. It seems to have the greatest reach. Seems to be where people are at. And so, I mean, I'm on True Social as well, but I don't really use True Social. My engagement there was super low. So,
yeah. Well, and I think with Elon taking over again, or taking over Twitter, I think things are picking back up, over there. So we'll see how that goes. Follow Jay. Thank you, Jay, for being here and for all the work that you do, man. Keep up the good fight. And everybody go follow him. And I think also like, subscribe, share this channel. share this video out. I don't know if YouTube knocked us down, but we didn't get the kind of engagement I usually get on videos here. So that's interesting. So help beat the algorithm and share the channel. Jay, thank you so much for being here. Everybody, we will see you soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jay.